Hello and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde. Well, it's a Friday, and a good number of us will be aware that the President Buhari, has been in the UK for that Global Partnership on Education Summit. And of course, he went ahead with a number of people. But one good news that has come out of it so far is that Nigeria is likely getting about $120 million from the Global Partnership on Education to be used in developing the sector, particularly regarding the girl-child education. Of course, that was part of the outcome of Nigeria's participation at the summit yesterday, happened in London. And the president joined other world leaders at the summit, where they made 5-year pledges to support efforts to help transform education systems in up to 90 countries and territories around the world. Now, during that panel discussion, the president, as you can see, said education occupies top priority in his administration. Let's take a listen.
Education is a starting point.
Yes.
Anybody who missed the opportunity of receiving education, he has missed everything. Because you cannot succeed outside your educational qualification. This is very clear to everybody, hence the fight for opportunities for education is very, very severe. The problem of infrastructure, physical and intellectual. Physical is the sense of classrooms, equipment,
Textbooks.
intellectual, the teachers, and convincing those who are really qualified to go into teaching profession. Teaching profession, you would rather go where engineers are wanted, where they will award contracts,
Yes.
rather than fight children day in and day out. So I assure you that Nigerians are acutely aware of the priorities of education. And they are going all out to make the necessary savings and make the necessary inputs to make sure that their children and their wards get the opportunity to have the best of education.
Well, that's what the president has said. And he talked about infrastructure, both intellectual and physical. And, you know, that will be the challenge for many, many people, really. Because we've been talking about, you know, infrastructure for education over the years, and one wonders how far so far. I mean, you must have seen pictures of schools where students were abducted. And sometimes you just wonder if indeed tomorrow's leaders are being raised in some of those infrastructure. So those are the issues there. And that's aside from something he also talked about, the academic infrastructure as well, intellectual infrastructure as well. And, you know, had reason to live through Nigeria's education policy. And I'm just asking myself, maybe there's something that I'm missing, but how is this futuristic? How is Nigeria's education policy futuristic? How is it looking forward? Is there a plan in any policy of government, especially for education, that says within the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, we would have produced X number of engineers, X number of, you know, fintech fellows, X number of farmers who would be doing this or doing that for the nation? That's begging a lot of answers. Added to that is the fact that, okay, so the world has literally gone technological. How much of that really, in what way is Nigeria looking to the future to say, you know what, let's think differently? Because many courses, many of the intellectual infrastructure running the academics, our academics at all levels today, many educationists say they're already outdated. Question then is, what are we doing to upskill? Well, maybe this hope presented by the Minister of State would help.
GP has been around for the past almost 2 decades. Right. Now, this is the third or fourth tranche of allocations that are going to be made. The push today is the Prime Minister of Britain and the President of Kenya reaching out for a fundraising and to put nearly 5 billion into a plate. Now, the GPE itself, which is the global partnership for education, seeks to address the gaps in education fulfillment for everybody around the world. Now, Nigeria is a partner country. We're not a donor country. So if you're a partner country, your first response will be to listen carefully to what is being raised. But if you're a partner country, your first response will be make yourself available to get as much as a chunk of what it is. Throughout all the meetings we've had Tuesday and Wednesday, we've now gotten a commitment that seems like Nigeria will walk away with nearly $120 million that we'll then negotiate how we can use them, especially targeting the states that are most vulnerable, because there are large areas in the country where a lot of impact hasn't been made, and we're here. I'm not sure whether all the countries will be happy that we are walking away with that. Everybody believes that Nigeria is an oil company, oil state, and if we could, but we also try to explain that in spite of the fact that Nigeria is an oil producing country, its debt servicing ratios are very, very high. To build infrastructure across big swaths of country like this is a very, very high estimate. The security challenges are very, very, very high. A lot of our people that we've already trained are not in the country. They are in diaspora servicing everybody else in the world except Nigeria. They're working everywhere. So it's really, Nigeria is challenged by all kinds of factors, and we've impressed upon them they need to engage and stay engaged with Nigeria.
120 million US dollars being expected by Nigeria from the Global Partnership for Education. This is not the first time Nigeria will be getting this kind of resource, of course. The one that readily comes to mind is the Safe School Initiative, which came in the aftermath of the kidnap of the Chibok girls, 2014. I think it was the same year or the year after that Safe School Initiative by former Prime Minister of the UK, Gordon Brown, was asked to do that on behalf of the United Nations. And the question is, how far so far with that one? What's the assurance we have that this one will also not go that way, would achieve exactly what it's intended to do? I guess it's not just the announcement that we want to see. It is actually a plan to ensure that that announcement will go as announced and as planned. In the meantime, there are a number of other issues on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Let's take a look. All right, let's take a look at the papers, beginning with the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and it leads with that story that we led the news at 10 with yesterday. IGP orders probe as Hush Puppy fingers Kyari in alleged $1.1 million fraud. That's the lead of the paper this morning. A U.S. court orders top cop's arrests. How he was linked to money laundering, says FBI. Hush Puppy only sent 300,000 naira for kaftan. I connected him with my tailor, Kyari clarifies. Find all of that on the front page this morning of the Nigerian Tribune. And how far is that one going? Don't worry. Don't forget that, Abba Kyari is touted as a super cop. So, is that one of those banana peels? Find the details on page 2 and follow the story. That picture you see there is, of course, of presidents at the Global Education Summit on Financing Global Partnership for Education 2021 to 2025 in London yesterday. The story right under it Education, Nigeria's size, population, major challenge for any governments, says Buhari. Find that story on page 5. If you were able to catch the clip earlier, you must have also heard him talk. Well, you would also remember that a few days ago, the central bank made a pronouncement. Well, here is an update right beside that picture. BDCs still provide forex services, says ABCON. Find that story on page 7. Not ABCON, is AB. ABCON. Yeah, page 7 of the Nigerian Tribune has that one this morning. What's that all about? Really? Where are they getting the forex from? The details you find on page 7. And right above the nameplate, Zulum inaugurates 1,000 hunters to protect farmers. Yes, insecurity has been known to be a major impediment to farming and food security in the country. All of the details you'll find on the inside pages of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And also right beside that one, court criticizes orders DSS to produce 12 detained Igboho's aides August 12. That story is on page 8. And DSS replies, only 3 aides are being held. Find the story on the inside pages this morning. And a number of other stories we will still find on the inside pages. 2023, Atiku meets Wike over unity, stability in PDP. Page 26 has that one. On the back page of the Nigerian Tribune, Okagbare laments Nigerian athletes ban. And what does that mean? You find on the inside, on that page actually, and right under that one, the Ministry of Sports says it's unfortunate. Well, that's the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Up next is the Vanguard newspaper. And Vanguard newspaper picks up from where the Nigerian Tribune leaves off. Leading with Tokyo Olympics shame. Outrage over ban of 10 Nigerian athletes. That insert story, you find the Guardian predicted this in October 2020, where it says doping, Nigeria risks Olympic disqualification, and you have pictures of the 10 Nigerian athletes banned. What does that mean? All the riders on the side there. A calamitous disaster for Nigeria, says Ngerem. Ministry appeals to athletes to remain focused. Okagbare slams sports authorities. AFN accepts responsibility. AFN didn't test athletes, says Coach Kitley. Colin wants Senate to investigate. That story you will find on page 4 of the Vanguard newspaper. If you recall, we had this conversation, it was last week, Friday, and just when the games were to open, we're hearing that we had hopes in certain games, and to be seeing this on the front page of newspaper, most certainly something concerning. Waiting now for responses and what the authorities would be doing about that. U.S. court, that's right above the nameplate. U.S. court orders arrest of DSP Kyari over indictment by Hush Papi. The story is on page 5. Forex ban. CBN shuts door against new BDC licenses. OPS kicks. The story is on page 19. Those who are wondering, how is it difficult for us to communicate with all stakeholders whenever a policy is to be initiated, then you'll find the details on the front page and on the inside pages to find out what's going on. Electoral Act, that's beside the Olympic story. There is room for amendments in future, says presidency. And that's the the story, the details you find on the inside pages. Mr. and Mrs. Here again, Mr. talking to Mrs. Come on, Lydia, smile. This is weekend. You have all my love. And Mrs. says, if you are sincere, you should add and all my money too to that statement. The back page has sports. NFF blames COVID-19 for non-payment of Eagles, coaches, bonuses, and on. So many other stories on the back page of the Vanguard newspaper. Good morning, Mapwe.
Good morning, Ayo. It's a rainy day here in the Federal Capital Territory, but hopefully the clouds will clear soon enough. While we're waiting for that to happen, I hope that our viewers have their cup of tea or coffee and keeping warm. Let's take a look at what the Daily Trust has for you on the front page. Despite legal questions, APC begins congresses tomorrow. Yes, they lead with politics. Supreme Court pronouncement divides party. Boni's committee should be dissolved. That's according to Buhari's aides. And judgment has no effect on caretaker committee. So there's been some back and forth between some of the president's aides and, of course, the party lawyer. So we did see the party lawyer yesterday saying the congresses will go ahead and that they should not be afraid. You know, they should not go with any fear, that the Supreme Court judgment was clear. But there are those who believe that they just missed a bullet with the Supreme Court judgment. I mean, look at how narrow it was, 4-3, 4 justices to 3. 4 majority rulings to 3 minority rulings that could have shot the APC in the foot in Ondo State. But this is what the dailies are saying this morning. This is how Daily Trust is choosing to capture it. Despite legal questions, APC begins congresses tomorrow. It's a page 5 read for you. They have a number of other stories here. Just look beneath the nameplates. Kaduna files fresh charges against Zagzaki as cleric flown to Abuja. So it's not over, it will seem, just yet. They also have that Kiari story. Super Cup, in parentheses there. Super Cup Kiari in the eye of the storm. That's also there. This very rather embarrassing story. Gunmen invade ministry in Nasarawa, cart away 100 million naira. Plenty of investigation to be done there. It's on page 27 of the paper. At the bottom here, 1,000 hunters join fights against Boko Haram in Borno. And you see the picture there of the 1,000 hunters that have been recruited by the state governor, Babagana Zulum, in Maiduguri. That's what Daily Trust has on the front page for you this morning.
The leadership is following suit, you know, with its own leading today. Its lead story, despite Supreme Court verdict, Boni committee stays, APC declares. The story is on page 4. Says, what congresses still hold as planned? Atiku, Wike mend fences, say only a united PDP can take over government in 2023. That's what you have right there on the front page of the paper. The hush puppy story is also there right under the nameplate. IGP orders probe of allegations against Abba Kyari. And the picture of the president and the Prime Minister of Britain, Boris Johnson, there. PMB Boris Johnson vowed not to interfere in judicial process. That's anything concerning terrorism. And right under that story, we have capacity to meet forex demand. That's ascribed to bank CEOs. Stories on page 40. All the details are right there. That's the leadership newspaper today.
The Guardian has this one. No going back on APC congresses. Buni vows despite court verdict. Yes, they're also leading with politics, so that's also on the front page of The Guardian. Yeah, normally you would see The Guardian lead with some economic story, but the politics is where the money is at this morning. That's the front page of The Guardian. Look at what they have at the bottom. Okay, well, they still have some stories on the economy there. Nigeria's revenue to GDP is abysmal, says Akaboize. Federal government to seek judicial interpretation of budget appropriation. Presidency. Nigerians didn't elect executive legislature to fight each other. So you might want to know where all of this is coming from. But this is really not new. Nigeria's revenue to GDP is abysmal. But when it comes from the Director of Budget Office, then you have to take a second look at what is being said. It's a page 6 read. 6 die, 8 injured in Bauchi crash as 2 Loma officers crushed to death in Lagos. A really sad one there. They have that in the Metro section of the paper for you. Other stories of interest. NYC's color policy dilemma of core members. It's in their focus. So they have some focus on the National Youth Service Corps this morning on the front page of The Guardian. You may want to take a look at that. And there is some opinion, some op-ed for you on the back page of The Guardian. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Nigerian News Direct. IGP direct investigation of FBI allegation against Abba Kyari. That's what you have on page 3. Is where you have the story. PDP demands investigation into alleged link as Kyari denies any fraudulent involvement. That's the lead of the paper today. And right above the nameplate, CBN to refund 35 million naira capital deposits to BDC applicants. Stories on page 14. Remember, the CBN governor had said that they have about 5,000 applications for BDCs. Is that where all of that money has come from? The CBN will have to refund. Well, all the details you'll find on page 14 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And that's the papers today. We're back for the issues. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. In the laws that set up, that part of the laws that governor says that every telephone subscription has to be registered to the subscriber. Why? For security reasons. Now, so it's not also surprising when the federal government said that all SIMs needed to be registered. Every SIM that is in use in Nigeria ought to be registered. And of course, all of that panic that went on late last year, early this year, to ensure that all Nigerians register. That's not really a new policy because it's something that the government had been talking about for years. Well, anyway, all that happened, and this is where we are now. But what is shocking is that even though we have about 6 million SIMs linked to their national identity numbers, the challenge on our hands is how effective has that exercise been for the purpose of security or for security reasons, as we say. Well, that's part of the conversations we're having this morning, and Alfred Okudili joins us this morning. He is a forensic security consultant. He joins us virtually. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And first of all, would you say that we have made any significant movement forward in the objectives of the SIM-NIN linkage in our country?
Well, good morning and thank you for having me on. In fairness, I would rather want to respond this way. We have a population of over 200 million. And we're talking about 6 million upgraded national identity platform. Of course, when you compare that to the population, it's nothing. However, I know that the relevant agencies, security agencies, have been frankly putting in a lot to ensure that we secure our state and have a more stable security situation in the country. I don't think we have done too well, but I think there is a starting point, and probably that's exactly where we are now.
Well, one would have expected that it's something that should have been built into the DNA of the system, so to speak. I mean, we started having talks about all this GSM, mobile telephony in Nigeria for many years, even before GSM came. You would remember the 090 platform that was, that came well before the GSM of 2001. So I'm wondering, that's something that should have been built into the system. You do not even get the SIM without it being registered. At what point did we drop the ball, and what's the assurance that we're not going to do it again?
Well, I think it has to do with awareness. We've
Awareness on
gradually
whose
come
part?
to the
Awareness on whose part? On that of the telecom operators or the people?
No, awareness on the policy makers in Nigeria, because without adequate policy, I think some of these projects will suffer a lot of setbacks. And you have to bear in mind that in making policies, there are lots of factors that comes to play. Most of which is political. The political class is sharply divided, and of course, there are also certain influences on the political class, majorly ethnocentric and, of course, religious influences. So when you bring this to the board, you find a conflict that has hindered us from making holistic policies that serves the good and benefit of the entire nation. So that seems to be, I don't know if we're coming out of that, but it has hampered the perception capacities of our political leaders. So the policy makers drive this project. And if they are not well equipped, if they are not well informed, and if they don't have a visionary outlook to particularly security issues, it will be long in coming. It will remain a challenge to the system, because we've had the police before the independence of Nigeria. I wouldn't blame the colonial officers, because that was not their priority. They wanted their own security while they explored the surroundings or the environment. But from independence, I guess we came into independence grappling with a lot of ethnic issues, and we didn't have the opportunity to develop our capacity to engage at the level that would have prepared us to be in a better position by now when it comes to building a central database that could serve security purposes and, of course, other national interests.
It's quite surprising that issues around capacity and ethnicity and, how the political class is structured, even has an effect on a policy that looks pretty simple and straightforward in the face. We've heard of this name SIM registration way before now, as my colleague did point out, that there had been steps in the past to ensure that people's SIMs were linked to their national identity numbers. But it's only in recent times that we have seen an aggressive push. In fact, an initial deadline was set, and there was a lot of uproar as to how the process was going, especially coming in the light of COVID-19. And, it was seen that government did listen, and they kept on pushing the deadline. The deadline has been pushed even once again, but so far we understand that about 60 million Nigerians have been registered on this SIM linkage, or SIM-NIN linkage, if you like. The question now is, how are they harmonizing the data? Because there are fears that the telecom companies are just the ones doing the registration. They will take your number and take your NIN, and you have it somewhere in the database of the telecoms company. But NIMC is supposed to take all of this data and synchronize. The question is, I do not know how much faith you have that NIMC itself has the capacity to be able to do that. I mean, if we're looking at 60 million Nigerians already being registered, what are your thoughts from what you know of the sector?
Well, I think they are capable of doing what they've been set up to do. The question is, do they have the know-how and also the resources? It's one thing. We're all Nigerians. We know sometimes things don't work as fast as we intended them in our society. The National Identity Management Commission, of course, I believe they have competent hands. They have the capacity to deliver on this project. But when you talk of capacity, you can't use the um, paucity of funds. If they don't have the funds, they could have the best ideas, but there will be little they can do without resources. So I would think that if they have been well funded, have not consulted with with the operators of the sector, but if they were well funded, I do not think that we'll be talking about this now. For the telecom companies, they are under pressure because they would want to be seen not to compromise the already worsening threat across the country. And one major, traffic through which our information travels, whether they are crime or non-crime related, is the telephone. Um, People, for instance, kidnappers cannot have a successful outing without telephone contact. They can't send human beings to go and negotiate for ransom. So they needed that platform. So if we have the resources and the know-how, I think the national identity management could have done better. For the telecom companies, of course, criminals ride on their network to deliver their demands and, of course, control their interests. So I will see the pressure on them, and I'm sure they are spending a lot to get it done. Sadly enough, the political class haven't given it any push because probably because a lot of them have policemen guarding them, paid for by public funds. So they don't it doesn't come to them at any cost. They don't feel as much threat as most Nigerians. So this will be a factor. Other than that, I don't see
How
why
vi-
we should be talking about. Yes, go on.
How vital is it for a country to have a central database? Because at the end of the day, I think that's what a lot of Nigerians are hoping that the exercise was going to provide. A situation whereby people will not have to, thumbprint at NIMSI. When they want driver's license, they go to thumbprint. When they want passport, they go to thumbprint. They want to believe that wherever it is that, if you have registered in a place, say for instance, at NIMSI, whenever it is you go to get a national passport, for instance, if your information is called up, that information should be the same and perhaps should be able to serve the purposes that, say, the passport office will need it for, immigration might need it for. How vital is it? You say that the authorities haven't really pushed. Some might disagree with you. How would you qualify this push for this NIN SIM registration?
You cannot have security without information. Um, Security agents are not ancestral skills. They need contact. In our circle, we say that you cannot have a contact without a trace, and that's where they are. The identity numbers or the identification numbers of the population is critical to the security planning in any country. And I don't think it's exclusive to Nigeria. We have about 46 African countries that have made the national identity project compulsory for their citizens, at least for those, from the age of 16. In fact, in some countries, you have 2 months after you turn 16 to ensure you have your national identity on you. It's sad that I think when it comes back home, we have this tendency to politicize everything, and that's why I said our problem comes from with due respect, the political class, because their priority doesn't seem to tally with our national needs. When it comes to political interest, they discuss voting, winning elections. But for people to vote, if you want credible elections, you need credible identity. You need credible process that will ensure that the best candidate emerges. But that is not
Are
our
you
priority.
saying that are you, if I get you right, you're insinuating that this process has already been politicized? The question I'll ask is how?
It is. It is because an average Nigerian does not understand that their security is private. So you find that people are complaining even across the country. In some areas, the registration is so difficult. People gave up after going to the NIMC offices, and they waited for days. Some people starved, queued for hours, and no policy statement, no government came forth to aggressively address the challenges that those responsible for the registration were going through. So you find also that when we are doing elections, because people hope to rig, they don't want credible elections. So the cards will expose individuals. If you come to a polling unit and you want to vote, and your information is captured in the central data system, and the agency conducting the election also have access to this information, they find out that it will be difficult for you to cheat, because if you vote at one unit, you will not be capable of voting at another unit. So if we stop this project from having effective function, the people who gain are those that see gain, political gain out of the kiosk. So that's why we're having this issue. That's on one part. There's also the
I find
ethnic
that a
dimension
little.
to it.
Sorry to interrupt
Okay.
you because we're about to make
There
a
is the,
second part. I was about to interrogate the first part of your submission, but let's quickly take the second part of your submission.
now, there is the ethnic dimension. But before I touch the ethnic dimension, let me touch the awareness. Most Nigerians are not really aware of the necessity for their having these documents. And because also the preparation and provisions to make it a successful exercise was not adequately put in place, Nigerians felt if it's important to the government, they should organize it better. So a lot of people lost interest. And now to the ethnic thing, people in some areas, because of their level of education and awareness, do not attach any importance to the national identity program, because they feel they're in the farm, they're in their communities, they've never left their communities. The only time they see activities around them are during the campaign, political campaign period. So they really don't have any contact, any relationship with the structures of governance, apart from when certain demands are required of them. So there's a disconnect. Until we address those challenges, the project will be struggling to take off as effectively as it should.
Well, I have heard of, excuse me, I've heard of political, I mean, there have been questions as to how, for instance, Nigerians who hope to get NINs, I mean, to get their national identity numbers, how those people are confirmed as Nigerians, especially since we have been able to confirm that we do have incursions from neighboring countries, people who might have some affinity with certain ethnic groups in our country, you know, who are able to make their way in here. And we have no way to seem of really knowing who is a Nigerian, whose roots are originally in Nigeria. And this is a problem we have with most border communities. So yes, that is a problem I have heard so far in terms of knowing who a true Nigerian is. I don't forget that even the case of the vice president, former vice president is currently being challenged in court over whether or not he was a Nigerian as at the time he was even vice president of this country. So those kinds of challenges exist. That is on the one hand. But in terms of this name SIM registration, I mean, the penalties are obvious. If you're not able to register, link your name with your SIM, at some point they believe that you'll be cut off. So there is some incentive for Nigerians to want to do this name SIM linkage. And INEC has already said that they would not need NIN for you to do your voter registration. So a registration which is currently ongoing. So for some people, there might be some misunderstanding or disagreement, it will seem, when you say that, oh, there could be some political calculations into this, because the name SIM registration is not needed for voter registration. So how is this affecting politics, so to speak?
Okay. First of all, voting in a country is meant for the citizens of that country. And they are supposed to have been captured in the database of that country. So the system knows if you're of age, because at birth, you are supposed to have your national identity. That's how it's done in some countries. I don't usually like using the United States of America and Europe as examples, but even here in Africa, in South Africa, and in some other parts, Botswana, and some other countries across Africa, it is very crucial that a child is given his national identification from birth. That's why we have registration of birth, and we also have registration of death. So if people do not have their identity from their local point of entry into the world, which is their birth, my sister, it's going to be difficult for them to understand the weight. Now, how does that affect us? When we go to the pools, they bring figures, they bring registered documents, and they tell you that this population is registered to this polling unit. Last local government election, I was in the polling unit, where they had about 3,000 registered voters. Not up to 100 people showed up. Now, you'll be wondering how 3,000 people could have come to register at that unit, and on an election day, they're not showing up because they don't feel connected to the activities. Probably they did it because if you don't have a voter's card, you might not be able to enjoy certain benefits or be allowed access by the state government or the local government to enjoy some things. So people look at what they tend to gain. Now, we don't have a patriotic perspective to this entire exercise. Voters, your NIN card, your NIN is supposed to give you a unique identification that helps you to engage not only in political activities, commercial, academic, and also other demands of the society. It helps the society to capture their population. It also helps the authorities, particularly to monitor the activities of citizens. So when we have a peculiar or unique identity card on us, the system knows that you have moved from point A to point B. The system also can trace activities related to your life. Whether you're sick or you're healthy, the system will find that because...
Yes, that's for the elections. But, can you speak to the substantive issue of the relevance of this NIN SIM registration to security? There are reports awash, all over the place that, people, bandits, kidnappers will call victims, relatives and dependents, and just in order for them to say, okay, this is where you bring the ransom to and everything. There are reports that on some occasions, these victims' relatives give the phone numbers to security agencies for the purpose of tracking that number, hopefully, and being able to know the location of the bandits and all of that, or who even owns that SIM. That hasn't been happening, or so it would seem. So that's why a number of people are asking, Is this NIN-SIM registration really as useful and as expedient for security as government made it known to the people? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Could you kindly... Go on, please. Go on. I couldn't hear you for a bit.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can.
I said, okay, the system is working. That's what we call geolocational tracking of criminals. And this has to do with their phone. Now, there's no phone call that does not transit through a mask. Now, for every signal on the phone, there is a mask closest to that device that picks that signal and sends it to the other end. So the NIN system is working because once you provide those phone numbers to the security agencies, we do tracking. And this tracking leads us to the geolocation of the criminals. And most of the criminals that have been apprehended have been successfully apprehended because this technology was deployed. What we are worried about is that the capacity to effectively drive such process is slow because we have limited capacity to engage. We don't have too many registered professionals in this field that can conduct such services for the security agencies. Their equipment also needs, because this, technology keeps changing. So not so many organizations have the equipment to do tracking. So without equipment, that's why I said capacity is the percent. If we don't have the capacity in terms of the security infrastructure that drives the use of these of NIN, for instance, we will be having delays because most tracking, registered tracking agencies or companies have tons and tons and tons of, inquiries. So by the time you are done with 10, 20, the criminal keeps moving because they know that if they are stationary, apprehending them will be so easy.
Is that in a way saying then, Mr. Onogo, my apologies, is that in a way saying that, the whole idea, the whole policy isn't well thought out or thought through properly? Because if we have these shortfalls that you are talking about and we're not able to use the information available to us simply because we do not have the equipment or the personnel or the capacity, then it makes nonsense of the policy and the whole exercise, don't you think?
I agree with you. The policy is a good one, but like I said, the capacity is not there. The manpower, for instance, we don't have the personnel. The equipment are not there. Most times, to get any of these things, you are talking of 100 to 200 million naira, to set it up. And not so many people. So I think the government will need to look at the need to not only fund, but also to train and develop the manpower capacity to engage in this service. Having the NIN is a good development. And I must tell all Nigerians, it's like the beginning of security. Because you can't secure a country in this digital world without the capacity to track what happens in the digital space. A lot of people no longer need to move around. You can send information, snap things. I remember in my childhood, to send a letter to a family, it takes like 7 days and another 7 days or more before it gets back to you. But today with my WhatsApp, I just send information and I'm chatting and talking with somebody thousands of kilometers away.
Well,
and
Mr.
I can
Onogo,
get things done.
yeah,
So,
with all of the issues that you have raised so far, is it a way of saying then that the authorities are not as serious about ending insecurity as we want to believe?
well, I don't think any honest leader would want to allow insecurity to be festered on the society. So I believe they are not doing enough. They are doing something, but I think they are not doing enough. They are not giving the infrastructure, security infrastructure, what is required for them to be able to be on top of their game. So they need to do more. They need to do more.
All right, then. We have to thank you very much for being a part of our conversation this morning. Mr. Alfred Ononugbo is a forensic expert and security consultant. Thank you very much for your perspectives on this issue this morning.
It's always my pleasure.
All right. Thanks for staying with us. Just 2 days ago, we found this report on the front pages of the dailies that says that we are definitely, up against serious food crisis, food insecurity, if you like. And that also, of course, came from the office of the vice president, among so many others. And there have been several initiatives, efforts by government over the years to diversify the Nigerian economy from just oil to agriculture, among many things. And the value chain is limitless and endless. And one wonders, how come we have all of this money and we are not spending? Coupled with that, just about Salah period, we heard from the office of the president that the president is aware now through the Economic Advisory Council that just 2.5% of Nigeria's arable land is being cultivated. That's down from about 41% in 2018, according to data also made available in public space. So I'm just wondering, how far so far and where do we go from here? There are several other initiatives in play, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some of them. But exactly what are the issues? We have some practitioners and academics who will be able to deal with these issues for us. Dr. Sam Oluogbon is an agronomist and a farmer. He is also secretary to the board of Center for Sustainable Agricultural Empowerment. He joins us from Ilorin, as well as Sheikh Usman, who is chairman, Mile 12 International Market. He's also a farmer. Both gentlemen join us virtually this morning, one from Ilorin, one from Lagos. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. Dr. Ologbo, let me begin with you. Exactly what do you think we are grappling with here? Because we keep hearing about food crisis. You saw that report just before we came on, what's happening in food insecurity in Yobe State. And there are several reports, like that. Exactly what do you think we are, grappling against? And are we really aware of the severity of the challenges on hand?
Thank you very much. And good morning to you.
Could you kindly take down the volume on that TV set so that we can enjoy what you're saying? Just mute the TV set.
Good morning once again.
We still have a lot of echo that is making it uncomfortable to hear you. Well, if you can mute your TV, it will really help. But Mr. Usman, if you can also do us a favor, just mute the monitoring sets around you, the television set, mute the audio so that we can have a two-way communication indeed. So, Dr. Ologbon, if we can at least let's try again, see if we've gotten it right this time.
Good morning once again.
Is your TV set on?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll try to fix this. There is a need for us to make sure that we have good enough audio so that, there is no howling back on either side. And if Mr. Usman is also, if you have your TV set on also, please, take it down. A recent report says 13 million people face the consequence of food insecurity. And one of the challenges that I keep battling with in my head is, do we even understand what we are going through? For me, there are at least 4 major stages in the food production chain. And I'm not talking about the entire value chain now. First of all, we'll talk about the planting phase, the planting phase, which of course comes in seasons most of the time, and then you need to know what you want to do and where you want to do it, how you want to do it, and that's talking about the plant, the crop production. How about livestock and all of those ones? Those are all there. They also have the same stage, and then you come to the harvest stage. Remarkable information that I got along that line, indicates that sometimes we've been told this, that farmers are told that before you can harvest in the north, before you can harvest, you have to pay a toll. You have to pay to go to your business. I don't get it. And then there is also the third stage of the logistics. And then, of course, the last leg, which is, really getting the facility to the people. Well, let's see if we have Alhaji Usman. We can hear him very well now. He's the chairman of Malto Market, as we said earlier. Thanks for joining us this morning, Alhaji. So, first of all, take us through exactly what do you think we are grappling with. You are a farmer and a trader in agricultural commodities.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So you are a trader and a farmer. Do you think we have an understanding of what we are going through, really?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, if you can hear me very well.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like the analysis made, Nigeria is well over 250 million, or about 300 million people. And then you have just 4 million people farming in the country. And if 4 million people are farming, in where they are going to provide food for well over 350 million people, definitely you cannot get it right. That is number one. Number two is the attention for the farmers is not really much enough. We have paper farmers, we have speaker farmers who will go to the farm and do their legitimate business. We also have farmers who are in Abuja, sitting somewhere in a very comfort area, claiming to be a farmer, collecting grants, collecting money from federal government in the name of farmers, and they are not assisting the farmers. That also is playing a vital role. Another thing we're also into is security. It's also playing a vital role in, chasing people out of farming. Let me give you an example of Damasak in Maiduguri, where we have a lot of them doing a farming of pepper. That pepper used to complement so many things that we used to have in Malta market, for instance. Like tomato now that is very expensive somehow. When you have that dry tomato from Maiduguri and dry pepper, it complements it and make it a bit cheaper. Now, almost half of Maiduguri are not farming. So you can see the problem is enormous. It's a problem that would only need Almighty God to help us and then make the country a better country again.
Well, there's the different stages in this, farming business that many people are not aware of. I mentioned 4 stages the other time: the stage of planting or investing in agriculture, the stage of harvesting or packaging, the produce for agriculture, whichever kind of agriculture one is doing. There's the logistics of moving it around, and then there's the logistic of getting it to the table of many Nigerians all over the place. What are the specific challenges? If you're a farmer, you're a trader, so what are the specific challenges that you think we need to be aware of in these various stages of agriculture in the country?
I think first is the concentration. There's need for federal government to concentrate hugely in farming. Of course, to also look deeply into what crisis farmers are going into. You've just mentioned one of it, which is infrastructure. Like now, for instance, if you are bringing goods either taken from the north or taken from the south, when you come to Makwa, around Niger, you are going to spend about 2 days in that place. And take example of somebody who is bringing perishable items like tomato or any other perishable items, and you are spending 2 days. It's a huge loss for a farmer. That is number one. Not even that, even people who are bringing cow, You can imagine cow spending 2 days, without eating anything, and other things that you're bringing as well is a serious matter. Now, let me come back to the issue of farming itself. The farmers are facing many challenges that they almost have nobody to explain to, except us that we are in the grassroots, whom they can easily see and explain things for on various occasions, that they are not getting help from federal government. The fertilizer is very expensive. There are a lot of issues that need a federal government to call stakeholder, people who are really, really into farming, not those one I call paper farmers, people who are stakeholders, to sit down and ask what is the situation on ground. And of course, people also need to go to farm. Just my analysis now, that we have 4 million people farming to feed almost 350 million people, that cannot be possible. And we're not exporting food from abroad. It also escalates and add so many things into this situation. I think the federal government needs to do something to solve the problem for us.
Just one moment. On that issue of federal government partnership, I'm wondering what you mean when you say that the federal government is not, giving enough support, because we always hear of the federal government, giving seedlings to some farmers, giving, support to poultry farmers, giving fertilizers and all to farmers. So if you say the federal government is not, helping out, and of course you're also aware of the CBN's Anchor Borrowers Program. So when you say federal government is not being helpful, is not assisting farmers, could you explain what you mean? Are you saying that those things are not getting to the farmers?
I can explain. That was what I mentioned. That's why I said papers farmers. There are a lot of people in Abuja who are there, getting all this stuff in the name of farmers, and they're not farmers. Now, let me give you an example of Mount Market. I have been the secretary of the market. I've been the field secretary of that market, and now I'm the chairman of the market. I'm talking about a ratio of almost 20 years in the regime, for instance. And Mount Market is the biggest perishable item today in Nigeria. Let me just say in Nigeria. It's the biggest, where you have a lot of produce coming from everywhere in this country. We have engagement with the farmers, we have engagement with the traders, and even the market itself. Now, the anchor borrower, tell me who collect anything in Maltrap market. Government has not given anybody a dime from our market. And the biggest, if for instance, I can say I haven't got anything, I can say my members in the market I could not get anything, because in the market, nobody can say he has gotten 1 naira from federal government in the anchor borrower. A Maltrap market of that magnitude that has well over 10,000 traders, and one of the biggest markets also, could not boast of having 10,000 from federal government, then who are they giving the money to? I'm not disputing they're giving money to people, but who did they give the money to? That is it. And many farmers too, who we engage in several locations, do tell us the problem they have. In fact, to even get their produce out of the farm to the city where they can, bring it down to Lagos, is also another problem for them. So, but it needs federal government to engage people who are really, really into the business, so that probably things can get better.
All right, let's see if we have Dr. Oluwalogbon, with us now. So let's see if we can hear you. Okay, I understand he's not there now. So, well, Ajusman, what are the options for us now? Because the figures are right there in our faces. If we are having these kinds of challenges, would you say then there has been any representation made by farmers, the ones that you are talking about, who you say you have data or information about, that have made any representation to government at any level, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture or the CBN Anchor Borrowers Program itself? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I can hear
okay.
you. Can you come again?
Yeah, I said, has any representation been made to the federal government, or the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, or the CBN's Anchor Borrowers Program about the issues that you have raised so far?
No, absolutely no. It's a program that I've started, and I believe it has ended. And of course, there's no any communication as regard our own market to say we want to open up again, we want to start the anchor borrower again. So on that basis, we absolutely has nothing to ask from the federal government. We have not made any request from them.
Well, some people will say, I mean, the question is whether, I mean, as my colleague did ask there, whether you made any representation, but the Anchor Borrowers Program, from what we understand, was a program specifically meant for farmers to ensure that their inputs are cheaper, and it was supposed to be an incentive for farmers to be able to make at least a little more profit and also be able to expand their operations. I do not know if there's a specific one for traders, people in the middlemen who take from the farmers and take it to the cities, and those who organize in the marketplaces. But assuming the federal government were to intervene, to say that at the end of the day, where they want to intervene were the markets, first and foremost, why do you think the federal government should intervene at that end? And two, what sort of intervention would you be looking at?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Malkwe. You've asked a very good question. Most of the people that bring goods to us in the market, we have about 3 categories of people. One, we have farmers that bring directly. We have people that buy from the farmers. We also have people who are normal traders who will go to the north and buy or anywhere and bring down to Lagos. In our engagement with them, none of them has ever gotten anything from the federal government. So how do we communicate to federal government? It's either, by writing to them or looking, like for instance, I have one example, for instance, I want to give you. We have a grant to collect from the federal government through Ministry of Commerce, for instance. Then we got the grant, for instance. A guy from Keystone asked us to open an account where the money is going to come from, for instance. We did that. We opened a Keystone account in K2 branch. Could you believe because of that, we couldn't get that? But that's not where I'm going. Most of the farmers we are engaging, like this year, we engage farmers in our 3 regions. We engage them in Sokoto and in Kano to ask them the problem they are facing. All they are saying is no assistance from federal government. Whatever the government are saying, yes, the federal government used to give this thing, but it's not coming to them directly. It's not coming to those people mentioned. So we've been trying all our possible best to see that our farmer gets a better treatment, but all to no avail. I don't even know who I should meet because nobody has ever engaged me in anything like this.
Now, some will argue that there's a lot of focus on the federal government. What about the state governments? Because farming is supposed to be on the concurrent list. Agriculture is on the concurrent list. Many states have their ministries of agriculture. And if that's supposed to be a veritable source of revenue, shouldn't the state governments, where these farmers are domiciled, be interested in the plight of their farmers?
Thank you very much, Margaret. Yes, Lagos State are doing very well. Just lately, about a month ago, the ministry, the commissioner for agri called me per se, and also asked me to come with my ESCOs to see if they can provide a land and also other things that can assist Lagos State in getting more food. Not even that, Lagos is also assisted us in giving us a lot of crate, because we're trying to see how we can change from rubber basket to crate. Most of things we sell in the market, we use basket. So Lagos is trying to change that through crate, and which they have already donated a lot of crate for us to assist and complement that effort. Another thing Lagos also do for us during the pandemic, during the corona pandemic, they assisted us in facilitating how to take food to people's house, because during that time, a lot of people are struggling to get food. But Lagos State give us the facilities and also assist us with some trucks to take food to the various communities within the Lagos axis. The Lagos State did not suffer during the pandemic because they have a lot of food and supported by the state government.
Well, we'll take a break at this point. And when we come back, we'll take a look at what support the farmers in the states where they're domiciled got from their own state governments. If you have any information on that, we'll be very happy to hear that. But let's take a break now. We'll come back and talk about some of the other challenges that the marketers, for want of a better phrase now, could be facing on a daily basis to also add to the price of food items. In a moment, please stay with us. We're still keeping our focus on rising prices of food items in Nigeria, that's across the country. And we have with us this morning Mr. Shehu Usman, who is the chairman of the Mile 12 Market Association. He's also a farmer. Sir, just before we went on break, we were talking about, some of the help you were looking to get from state government. You've enumerated some that you've received from the Lagos state government to keep you in business. But if you were to speak largely to the challenges that traders in the market face and things that could make their lives better in such a way that it will also positively affect the price of food items. In other words, bring down the price of food items. What are some of the things that you'll be asking for?
Logistics matters a lot because most of these, both farmers and traders, doesn't have logistics. They have to depend on the commercial buses that convey their goods, and then of course it's difficult sometimes. Not everybody want to take perishable items, so it requires having a special lorries or trucks that will be conveying that. Also, to make sure that we have a good routes, because perishable items doesn't have a long lifespan. It's a matter of just hours to start perishing. So we need logistics. It matters a lot.
By logistics, I mean, I'd like you to be a little more specific, because right now you heard the Minister of Agriculture there talking about transport and how that adversely affects the prices of food items. I'm wondering, and the federal government is talking a lot about investing in the rail system. I don't know if there has been any conversation to see if a coach or two could be available for people to start bringing their produce from the north to the south, or from the south to the north, as the case might be. Has there been any conversation along these lines, and even with the broad headline of logistics which you have used, has there been any conversation on the actualities, what logistics will involve if things are to get better for traders, and also to positively affect or bring down the prices of food items?
Yeah, there was a conversation between us and the federal government, and of course there's even a kind of test run to see how it works from the north to the south, bringing all these items. And I think that will help a lot. It will help a lot because train doesn't stop as much as lorries hooked in a hold up, like spending 4 days, 5 days in the road, which is not okay. But I think the government are doing so well in that aspect. If the railway is fixed, I think things will get better. And another thing that also play a role in this thing escalating, the price going up, is also the season. For instance, now we have tomatoes. We don't have much tomato from the north. Out of 100%, we just have maybe 2% from the north, who doesn't even come to the south at all. What we have is things are coming from the south. We have tomato from Udoba, we have from Ogumosho, we have from Abeokuta, we have from Ilara in Ogun State, we have from Benin Republic, we also have tomato from Cameroon.
Oh dear. Well, just about to say thank you very much for being a part of the conversation this morning. Shehu Usman is chairman of Mile 12 International Market, and he's also a farmer. We've also had Dr. Samuel Alogbo, an agronomist and farmer, unfortunately, weren't able to take his comments for tech reasons. But right now we have Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeyinka, who is essay on industrialization to the president of AFDB. He was in Nigeria, a few months ago. We talk about the SAPZ, Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones in the country. But we'll come to all of that conversation. Prof, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the program. Well, you've heard a few of those challenges in the agricultural sector, Nigeria's agricultural sector: resource shortages, violent conflict, outdated systems of agriculture. You also heard about the logistics, insufficient supply to meet the population growth, and lack of access to finance are some of the challenges that have been identified in tackling the Nigerian agricultural sector's challenges. What is your take? How do we even navigate out of this quagmire, given the humongous food shortage challenge as well?
Thank you so much, Ayo. Thank you, colleagues, for inviting me. I had the colleague who was speaking earlier. He's a practitioner, so he has laid bare the issues. Obviously, the issues affecting our farming system, food security, they are deep structural issues. And I always talk more about structures because this is really at the root of everything. Much of what we are seeing, of course, also goes back to, it's not recent. The issue of food insecurity in Nigeria is not a recent phenomenon. It's been there for the last 30 years or more. So what has happened is that COVID-19 has exacerbated the problem because suddenly you have over 70% of Nigerians not having access to food. Nigeria has moved into the one of the 10 top countries actually that are in crisis, that are classified as crisis, in crisis phase in terms of food security and all that. So it is not something that is new to us. And as you referred to earlier, we were in Nigeria recently to conduct what we call the appraisal of the states in which we are going to be establishing what we call special agro-industrial processing zones. Many of you have heard me talk about it. It's taken a while. It's almost 2 years we've been moving on this, and we are very close now. We'll be going to the board in October this year, and after that, hopefully we are going to be starting implementation. Basically, what these special zones are supposed to do is to address these deep structural flaws that we have in our agricultural system. Starting right from the farmer's end. Our productivity is very low, and this is something that everybody knows. Our technologies are outdated. We do not have the logistics, as colleagues was referring to earlier. So what the SAPZ is supposed to do is to address some of those issues.
Prof, just one moment. We will get to the SAPZ, but I think just as you have noted, it would be fair to, first of all, look at the core issues and be able to identify the roots so that, whatever initiative, is going to come afterwards will not go the same route. You would recall, Prof, that, and I, at the risk of sounding like a broken record in this matter, referencing the First Republic and the fact that we did a lot of producing across all geopolitical zones in the country at the time. Once we had a conversation with the governor of Ondo State, who said it took him up on the fact that we had grazing reserves all over the nation. And even he said there was one in Ondo State, there was one, still is, in Oyo State, I hope, and more than 400 in the north. And why did those things go under? According to the governor of Ondo State at the time in that interview, we abandoned them. So in terms of the fact that we have done this before, what are the things that you can trace as reasons why we abandoned them, and how do we ensure that doesn't happen again?
these remote courses, as you identify, affects almost all the Nigerian assignments, as I won't call it. If we put it in very straightforward manner, it is failure of governance. Let's be very clear. And I'm not talking of federal government, or it's across all our. If you look across all Nigeria, in a place like Ondo State, you have Romania wood processing, you had Okitikupa oil palm, you had go all across the states, all of them. So the reference you made is correct. In Oyo State today, in Fashola, in every other place, in fact, the governor there is now trying to revive some of those things that Awolowo did almost 5 decades ago. We ignored all of them. Why? I think it is the oil economy. You know, whenever a country does not understand that the extractive industry is not an answer to a structural issue, and I always say structural because when you produce and export oil, for example, or minerals, it is a wasting asset and it ends someday. But more importantly, it's subject to volatility. It's subject to shocks, external. And this particular shock of COVID was particularly severe because we got to a point where a barrel of oil was selling for the price of a cup of coffee. So you find that suddenly from $70 per barrel, you ended up having to pay actually for storage for many countries. And nobody was taking the oil. So if you want to go to the remote cause of this for me is where it starts. And wherever you find an economic-driven, very fundamental by this kind of extractive industrial process, you always have conflict. Have you ever seen governors and many of these people talking about industrialization? They talk more about how do we share this, how do we share the oil, and that has gone on for so long. For 40 years, this is all we talk about. Who owns it? How do we share it? Not how we process it. To the point that we have refineries that don't work. We have petrochemical industries that were established that don't operate. So the extractive economy destroyed agriculture also. Because what we find historically is that anytime a country is focused on this type of trajectory, they ignore agriculture totally. And we ignored agriculture. And we need to go back to it. But the more tragic part of it also is that whenever an extractive economy is also beset by conflict and insecurity, you drive away the 70% small-scale farmers that are in Nigeria. And this is really another issue. We are still largely an agrarian economy. 70% small-scale farmers who have no access to, the basic technologies, varieties of food.
Unfortunately, Prof. Yeah, my apologies. Unfortunately, the 70% of those farmers that you talked about are, according to the Economic Advisory Council, through the spokesperson for the President, Garba Shehu, they are only on 2.5% of Nigeria's arable land. That's all the land that we are cultivating in the country. And it is very, very shocking, very, very disturbing. And an economist also says that we have all of the occupation we have of Nigeria's land is 20% for living, for doing anything, agriculture, whatever, industries and all. We're only occupying 20% of Nigeria's land, and 2.5% of everything is what we are using for agriculture. Now, you have also identified that we have this potential. Potential cannot be consumed. How do we move from potential to profit?
No, thank you very much. And the reason why these farmers, who in this case for me are the victims of our poor governance, is that that's all they can do. If a farmer has only hoe and cutlass, what else can he do? He can cultivate only so much in a day. But if you provide modern technologies, tractors, harvesters, and all that, improve the seedlings and all that, you begin to see farmers, one farmer, being able to cultivate a larger acreage of land. This is really the limitation. Beyond that also, the seeds that are accessible to them are of low quality. I give you an example. I just came back from Ethiopia. We went to inspect some of our special agro-industrial zones there. Ethiopia last year, due to the efforts working together with the African Development Bank, they harvested 1 million tons of wheat. They had a deficit of 1.7 million tons. And they are telling us that in 2-3 years, they're going to be net exporters of wheat. The process, the particular idea of doing this was started by Dr. Akin Adesina in Nigeria. The same process that he started was never allowed to go into fruition. In Sudan, the TAT program, what we call the TAT program in the AFDB, Technology for Agricultural Transformation, that we also supported Sudan with. 800,000 acres of land was planted by Sudan. And they are also now over 50% self-sufficient in wheat. So what am I saying? They also plan that in the next 3-4 years, they're going to be exporters of wheat. So we need to adopt technologies. You're asking me, how do we go to scale? We just need to do what others have done. We need to allow people, we need to allow the system to work. In South Korea, they have over 900 special industrial parks. Over 400 of them are agro-industrial parks. In Vietnam, they have almost 376 parks. Vietnam was at war almost 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Our problem here is governance system.
Okay, well, Prof,
when we
on that
Yes.
same issue, just so that we can get some solutions and hopes, you wanted to talk about the special agro-industrial processing zones that AFDB and some partners are trying to put together in Nigeria. The challenge I usually have, my fear usually about such programs is always a great start, but sustaining, that's usually the problem.
I agree with you. And this is why we want to do things a bit differently this time around. We have taken enormous care to go around, talk to stakeholders, private, public, government, and we have also engaged with government. And thankfully, we have a lot of support from the minister that this is not going to be business as usual, including even governors. This is going to be public sector enabled, but it's going to be private sector driven. This is not a project that will be run by some ministries. Yes, the states are borrowers, but the states themselves know they are beset by several issues. 3 of them. One is legacy issues. Whenever a state governor leaves, the one coming will rubbish everything he has done. Second, we don't have money. So you find that projects always suffer from capital, whether operating capital or whatever it is, And the third issue, of course, again, is management. Civil servants are not set up to manage enterprise. So the proposal we have made is that, fine, government is enabling this, and we have the same experience in other countries. Government has enabled it. We have worked with them to craft this model. But once government gets to that point where an enterprise should be formed, they must exist post-tender. Once we have companies that will run this business. And this is how it's run all over the world. As I speak to you, Ethiopia has 24 industrial parks, 24.
But Prof,
I live in Ethiopia.
My apologies. One of the challenges that a number of investors, especially in the agro sector in Nigeria, have talked about is the harsh investment environment. How are you navigating that?
True. No, so what does that mean to say harsh environment? One of the things you do in a zone, for example, is to have what we call the one-stop center. If you see, I'm giving Ethiopia because I just came back from there. They just finished what they call a pharmaceutical industrial park, 166 hectares. And they have a gigantic building. You can Google it there. It's a one-stop center. Immigration, customs, registration office, everybody is in that building within that same space. No investor goes around running around government offices as normally happens. So they have made it easy. The harshness is due to the fact that an investor comes into a country, the first gatekeeper he meets start asking for this and that. Oh, you have to go to Ministry of this, go to that one, come back tomorrow, come and see me privately. So what a zone arrangement does is to co-locate all of those bureaucratic issues and to remove them and allow them to, gone are the days when Nigeria think we can bluff anybody. Everybody is going somewhere else. So we really need to change our ways, So that's one of the things we are trying to do in every of those zones. Now, right now, we have 8 locations, and we are crowding in more states from next year. We are not going to ignore any state. In each of those zones, there will be those arrangements, so that a businessman comes. You want to put up a starch processing plant, or you want to produce honey, or you want to do sesame, or whatever it is, you have a place there. There are several models that we are going to be using. Some you have a factory sheds already built. Some in land, you can come and build your own land there. And all of the states have offered us, huge hectares of land to build this. We've concluded all the environmental studies. We've concluded all of the feasibility studies. Out of the 8, there are only 2 states left that will finish their studies. So we are on course with this. As you said, the biggest obstacle to doing business in Nigeria is bureaucracy and bureaucrats who don't follow the vision. This project was requested by President Muhammadu Buhari himself in April 2019. And the greatest legacy that any of these, the Minister of Agriculture or Industry, are going to leave is to allow these things to work, because they are working elsewhere. They are working. I was in Ethiopia 2019 at Bulbula zone. I was shocked at the progress they have made in just 1 year. Almost all the roads, everything in those zones have been completed. So it's not magic. It's not rocket science. The biggest obstacle to doing business is bureaucracy, and we need to remove it. If we do that, I have no doubt in my mind, Nigerians are smart people, they are entrepreneurial, Nigerians can work wonders. Once they see those examples, for example, I told you about 24 zones in Ethiopia. Half of them are private now. The moment they saw the exemplars by the government, a lot of private agro parks were springing up. So this is what we hope will happen. I understand your skepticism. Many people, even up to now, some even tell us, in your country, that's where they're going to be your problem. And but we are hoping that we're going to do this differently and that we're going to succeed.
Well, we sincerely hope that we prove the skeptics wrong and we make you at the AFDB proud. But then there have been talk around the local farmers, subsidizing Nigeria's food supply. And in recent times, there have been serious threats on the local farmers. We've seen how the numbers of those who go to farms have reduced. This morning, the papers had that in Borno State, the governor has gotten 1,000 hunters to protect farmers who are going to the farms. I do not know if you have any example anywhere on the African continent where farmers have faced this sort of crisis, where insurgents and various types of insecurity have threatened the local farming community, and what solutions they have been able to find in those instances.
No, thank you so much. I think the solution will be to, number one, to organize these farmers as much as possible. I give you an example. In this trip that we just came from, 2 companies alone are connected to 100,000 farmers. That was one of the highlights for me of that trip. And we can do the same here. This is what this is what they do. Now, a zone, a special agro-industrial zone is different from the typical export zone. An export zone actually simply just have a hub where you manufacture, process, and export. A special agro zone has 2 dimensions to it. That is the productivity side as a farming community between 20, 50, 70 kilometers connected to the factory area. So what we are going to do is ensure that all of those communities are helped, both not just in terms of the supply of seedlings and supply of irrigation, supply of all of those things, technology that will make them more highly productive, but also to safety. Now, what we see is peculiar. I mean, it has not always been like this in Nigeria, that we have a situation where farmers cannot go to their farm. And we are hoping that, in fact, there are 2 or 3 states that are going to be among these 8 states that are starting, are focused specifically on livestock to do modern ranching. So we are hoping that with this kind of intervention and what the federal government is also doing in their own way, we'll be able to collaborate with them and ensure that we remove this problem. At least we reduce the problem of clashes. We have to understand that, apart from the livelihood issues, there's obviously climatic issues, it is true, but also it's a security issue. So what we are hoping is that we are going to be able to provide security for those farmers in whatever way is going to happen. You give them one example of finding a local solution of hunters protecting these farmers. We'll look at all the models that are possible, and we're going to support them to ensure that farmers get higher yield for their farm, they get better income for their labor, and that they are safe. So these are issues that we're going to be discussing, as I said, within now and when we hopefully should be launching this program in November in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. So we'll look at all the models, and we're hoping that you colleagues in the media will also assist us in doing this. Mm-hmm. We have great hope that this is going to be a game changer for Nigeria.
Well, Prof, we have to thank you very much for being a part of this conversation this morning, and can only hope for the best and make sure that the right information get to the right people that really need it. Professor Oyebanji Oyelaro Oyeyinka is essay on industrialization to the president of the EFDB. Once again, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, I will be counting on all of you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Right, well, a number of messages have come in from you. A mail from Victor Orwell says about averting food crisis, $2.9 billion of agricultural imports to our country that still has over 97% of land for use for agricultural purposes. The real diversification will only come if we put oil in the background. The UAE used their oil proceeds to build a first world nation in tourism. If we use the oil money to develop agric, I will not buy 4 pieces of ginger for 200 naira as I did yesterday from my vegetable seller. I would normally sell 2 handfuls of the same product to me for 100 naira. We should be talking 2% land left and 97% used for agriculture purposes. If we do so and start immediately, in 10 years, we will be feeding the whole Africa and still have more than enough.
Of ginger for 200 naira brings it home. Professor Nakena has this one. It says a country like Netherlands, that is like a state in Nigeria and also a major player in oil and gas, has made over $120 billion from dairy products alone in 2020, which is more than Nigeria's 5-year budget. If government in 3 tiers sincerely supports 10% of its population by investing in mechanized and commercial agriculture, especially animal farming, Nigeria will be fairly sufficient in food production.
Dimola Lalade on the same matter says food inflation will continue to rise with the way the Nigerian economy is at the moment. Every sector of the economy has crumbled and agriculture is part of it, thus making the prices of food products to rise. The government should immediately look into improving the economy to make life more meaningful for Nigerians, because if not, criminal activities will continue to be on the rise.
And Makeli or Nokan, talking about the proposed $120 million education grant, says, before I can appreciate this gesture of $120 million from the summit, it will be noteworthy to tell Nigerians how much a delegation to the summit is costing the nation in total. It is after then that we'll begin we'll be able to see what our profit margin available for the actual purpose of the grant. It's so sad that Nigeria as a nation is celebrating a paltry sum of $120 million. The whole thing is just not adding up for me. That's what Makeli Onokan says. Well, we wish we could take a little more, but we're totally out of time. Edosa Egunaku, we see your mail. Judah Mechi, Oshinawa Kingsley, Henry John Agbo, we also see your mails as well. We thank you for engaging with us this morning and sending your comments and contributions to the program. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day and a lovely weekend.